Hello classic crew, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be answering your questions. So I asked you guys on Instagram to ask me questions for my channel. It could be about me, it could be about advice, it could be just about absolutely anything, and you guys sent in a ton of questions and I have a lot to answer. So I am really excited to get into today's video. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and let's get into it. So the first question is, how often are you working on classical singing these days? I'll be honest with you guys, not as much as I would like to. I think that because of COVID and knowing that I'm not gonna be able to perform publicly for a little while at least, I don't have that same push to be practicing every day and to work on my classical singing. And what I do for my channel is my full-time job, so it's a lot. But I love singing and I actually really miss it. But now that we've moved and everything is a little bit more settled down, I think I'd really like to invest more time in my classical singing, maybe find a teacher in the area and maybe start coaching again, because I haven't had the opportunity to do that in a long time, and I really like to. Now, finding a teacher is something that you do even when you're a professional. Even when you're a professional, you constantly need to be checking in with somebody who's an expert and who can kind of hear what you aren't hearing. So I really look forward to finding somebody who I can work with and who I can practice singing with. The next question is some of your favorite salad or healthy recipes. So recently, the kind of salad that I've been really into is Israeli salad. That has been something I've just been wanting all the time. I don't know why, but it's something that I think it's delicious and I just want to eat it every day. Part of the reason I really like Israeli salad is because the elements, which are parsley, cucumbers, mini cucumbers, not the big cucumbers. They don't taste good in Israeli salad. Mini cucumbers and tomatoes don't spoil as quickly as lettuce. Whenever I get romaine lettuce, it goes bad way too quickly. My husband will not eat salad. He does not like raw veggies. He'll eat veggies, but not raw ones. So I end up having to eat the entire thing and it just goes bad too quickly. Whereas with mini cucumbers and with tomatoes and with parsley, those things will last long enough that I can actually eat them and enjoy them and they won't spoil. So the recipe for Israeli salad is really easy. I just do 2 mini cucumbers for a single serving. It's kind of a big serving, but I'll have 2 mini cucumbers, 3 little Campari tomatoes, 1 lemon, and then about half a bunch of parsley, maybe a little less. And then I'll just mix that all together. I'll put lemon juice and olive oil and salt, mix it all together, and that's the whole thing. And it's super easy. It tastes so good, so fresh. Loving that. Now, the other thing that I eat on a regular basis is eggs. I think that eggs are a really good way to get protein, especially throughout the day. I usually have meat in the evening, but during the daytime and in the morning, I'll have just eggs or whatever else, maybe some yogurt, things like that. But I really like to make omelets, and I usually will do sun-dried tomatoes, normal tomatoes, red pepper, and onion. Just saute that and then put in a few eggs, and that is a really healthy snack. I got this question a lot. Do you plan to have children? Of course. That's one of the biggest things I talk about on my channel. I can't wait to have children, and it's definitely going to happen. This one says, ways for late 20s to be more classic. Well, technically, I'm in my late 20s. I'm 27, so I think I can offer good advice about that. You can be classic literally at any time in your life. You can be classic at 15, you can be classic at 25, you can be classic at 35. It really makes no difference. You can be classic at 55. And I think it comes down to having good values and embracing femininity and womanhood and embracing the wonderful things about being a woman. So if you are doing those things, if you are taking care of yourself mentally and physically, if you are putting in an effort to be respectful to other people and to present yourself well, and you have good values and you take seriously the things in life that matter, then it doesn't matter what age you are, but you will be a classic woman. Do you ever in the future plan to become a music teacher since you have a degree in opera? Not really. That isn't really my plan. I love singing opera, but I don't know why. I think I might have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I feel a little bit self-conscious about teaching opera, but I love singing opera and I also love what I do here. So I don't think I would transition to teaching opera, but maybe at some point, who knows? I keep seeing other YouTubers reviewing your videos. What do you think about this? Here are my thoughts. If you have an entire channel that is simply based around talking about other people, I don't think that that is a great reflection on you and what you have to say. That doesn't mean that if you want to do a response video every once in a while, that's a terrible thing. But if literally your entire channel is just talking about other people's channels, to me, that's not original content, and it's slightly sad. That's just where I come from. Do I take it personally? Not really. I say stuff that some people don't agree with, and that is what it is, you know, but it doesn't affect me, and I'm happy to keep making the content that I do. I think it's important and I care about it. So that's it. How many children do you want? I think I want 3 or 4. My husband has always said he wants however many, a lot. So we'll just see what God blesses us with when the time is right. Were you ever on the left side of the political spectrum? If so, why did you leave? That is an interesting question. So I was raised with conservative values, but when I was in my master's program at the Manhattan School of Music, I would say that because I was surrounded by people who had a differing viewpoint and where I couldn't voice my own viewpoint for fear of repercussions, I think that some of my opinions did start to lean more left because everyone I was surrounded with was left, and that was what I was hearing day in and day out. But I'll be honest, if I started to lean more leftist and if I started to kind of incorporate that into my life a little, I found that I was getting more and more unhappy. And when I looked again at my conservative values and I did my research and understood the arguments against the leftist thought that I was surrounded with, it was so obvious to me and to what I wanted from my life that being a conservative was the best thing for me, and those values are incredibly important. So in a way, yes, if you surround yourself with people who are constantly disagreeing with you and who are constantly not allowing you to voice your opinion, so you're just hearing one side of the story, I think anyone would maybe start to lean a little more one way or the other. And I think that did happen for me a little bit. But again, if I started living out any of that leftist thought, I just found that I was not happy, and it didn't make me a better or happier person. And when I started living out conservative values again and just really embraced that for myself, it was like, I feel like I blossomed. Favorite fictional book? Anna Karenina. Yes. I mean, I have a million fiction books. I love fiction, and I don't allow myself to read fiction enough because I feel like I need to be reading the stuff that's really going to inform me and make me a better thinker, but I love fiction so much, and it's my favorite stuff. But Anna Karenina is truly the best novel ever written, in my opinion, and I just absolutely love it. If we're gonna talk about some others, Gone with the Wind is incredible. And if you're looking for something that is slightly more new, there's a series that is the Seven Waters trilogy, and then I think there's another trilogy, but the first one is called Daughter of the Forest. And I really loved those books. I thought they were amazing. How to approach a guy you're interested in, but are only friends with. So I'm assuming that in this case, you guys are friends as of now, but you want it to be something more. That is hard. This is my advice with something like that, because that is difficult, and I have been there. So here's what I think. If you guys ever hang out alone, go out together and try and bring it up and see how he reacts. Maybe make a joke or say something that's like a little bit more casual and just see how he responds. And if he responds in a positive way, hey, you've moved your relationship into the place that you guys both want. But if he doesn't, that's also a good thing, because that's giving you an opportunity to recognize that this is not a relationship that can proceed forward. And if you have feelings for him, then you really can't be friends with him, because you're always going to imagine that there could be something more there. And if it's not going to go anywhere, then you're really just kind of locking up your heart to finding the right person for you. You kind of have to get an answer to that question, and hopefully you get the answer you want. But if you don't, you have to look at it as a good thing and move on and say, okay, well, this guy, I really like hanging out with him, and I called him my friend, but the fact is, if you have feelings that are more than friendship, he's not your friend, he's your crush. And if you hang out with him consistently in a way that allows that crush to develop even more, you're denying yourself the opportunity to meet the right person. The next question is, how often do you apply heat to your hair? So I used to do it more frequently, but I figured out how to do my hair, and this is very exciting. So basically, my hair does not hold a curl. It just will not hold a curl unless I use a very high heat. So I basically made the decision that I'd rather do my hair with heat, curl my hair twice a week, using a hair protectant at like 400 degrees, maybe 410 degrees. I know that's really hot, but I usually will only do it twice a week, and then I don't have to wash it for days, and it really holds the curl for days on end, as opposed to using maybe 300 degree heat, 350 degree heat on my hair, and then it falls out the next day and I just have to recurl it again anyways. And it's just annoying, and I just don't think that that's better for my hair to constantly be applying heat as opposed to applying heat twice a week and washing my hair twice a week, which is much better overall for me. I prefer it and it saves me time. So that's how I do the kind of heat styling thing, and I use a heat protectant. Do you have mostly Jewish friends, or is it a mix? It's a mix. I have some Jewish friends. One of my absolute closest girlfriends and a bridesmaid in my wedding is Jewish. And then we have a lot of Christian friends too. I've got a wonderful group of Christian women actually that I'm very close with, that I met when my husband was at UVA Law, and I just absolutely adore them, and we're all in a similar stage in our lives, so we can all kind of go to each other, and we all share really great values, and I feel really grateful for that. Godzilla or King Kong? In a fight, Godzilla. King Kong's just a big monkey. Is having a tattoo immodest? So this is a question I think I've gotten before. Here are my thoughts. I think that tattoos, I'm not a huge fan of them just from a Jewish perspective. You're not allowed to get a tattoo, so I've never been somebody who's been dying to get a tattoo. But from a modesty perspective, I think that it comes down to what the tattoo is for and where it is and how big and all of that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's immodest. I don't think that's the word I would use. But if you get a tattoo that represents something that matters to you and is important, something that happened in your life and is just kind of subtle and maybe in a place that's not super obvious, I don't think that that's a terrible thing. If you get a huge sleeve of tattoos, I just think that it makes it difficult to look professional. It makes it difficult to wear certain pieces of clothing. And I don't think that it really reflects as well on people. And it doesn't allow you to present yourself in a classic way. So a small tattoo for a certain reason, that to me is okay. I'm not a huge fan of tattoos that are bigger and are just kind of artistic and are really in big, obvious places. I just don't think that it looks professional, and I also think that it can give people a certain impression about you, even if that's not who you are. So it's just kind of not my thing. Can you take drugs and be classical? I say no. I don't take drugs. I've never taken drugs. I don't think that taking drugs, if you're totally out of control of your facilities in the same way as if you drink too much, you can't be classic because you will be kind of a mess and people will have to take care of you and you're not being responsible. I don't think that that's a good thing. Now, I understand that people take drugs and can still kind of have control of their facilities. I don't think it's a good thing. I don't recommend it, and I don't think it's classic. Not a question, but you should stream a D&D sesh. I don't know if you guys know this, but I play Dungeons and Dragons. I mentioned that in a video in Vlogica. I play Dungeons and Dragons with my husband and a few of our friends, and I really like it, and maybe at some point, my husband and I will talk about our characters. Or maybe we'll make a character, a Dungeons and Dragons character that fits into my classic theme. What do you guys think? Would you want to see that? Let me know in the comments. Can you make another cooking video? Yes. The issue is that my kitchen really isn't the best place to film anymore. In my last kitchen, I had a big island, so I could just easily film in there and show you guys how I'm cooking. This kitchen is a galley kitchen, so there's not really a great angle for me to show you what I'm making. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a way for me to cook with you guys, but it is a little bit trickier, so I really do have to figure that out. But I would love to do that. This is a deep question, and it says, how do you want to be remembered when you are gone? I'd like to be remembered as a good and kind woman, as a good wife and a good mother and a good daughter. I'd like to be remembered as someone who inspired others, and I don't know if that's too much to shoot for. I'd like to have created a legacy, whether that be within my own family or through Classically Abby, and providing a space for so many women who feel disenfranchised when they want to talk about their conservative values or womanhood. That's what I want. Will you be boycotting Sephora with other conservatives? So I don't know if you guys have seen this going around, but there is a creator here on YouTube named Amanda Ensing, and she has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. She is a beauty YouTuber, and she came out as conservative, and Sephora tried to pull a contract from her. It's a whole mess. She is doing a wonderful thing, fighting for conservatives to have a space where they're not necessarily going to be punished for their views. I'm lucky in that I don't ever shop at Sephora. I just don't ever shop there. I have always shopped at the drugstore. I'm somebody who likes to find cheap dupes for things. And the last thing that I bought that was expensive, I bought at Nordstrom. So I just don't generally shop at Sephora. I've linked Sephora a few times in some old videos, but I don't really shop there. So yes, if I shopped at Sephora, I would be boycotting them because I think what they did was horrible, but I don't shop there. So that also makes things easier. How is yours and Ben's relationship? Are you alike? How? So if you guys didn't know, Ben Shapiro is my brother, and we are alike. We are really alike. First of all, we look alike. But second of all, our personalities are very similar. Both of us care a lot about the conservative movement, and we feel that we have a role to play. We both love our families. We both live a Jewish life. We are both people who are people of action. We like doing things and getting things done. And I think that that is something that makes us similar. What's your advice for someone preparing to go to college and start their adult life? Don't give in to peer pressure from your peers who act like it's adult to do stupid things. It's not adult to drink and hook up and act like an idiot. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Being adult is about taking responsibility for your actions, and if that means that you're called a nerd by people who want to party and waste time, then you're called a nerd, and that is a-okay in my book. So just ignore anyone who tries to make you feel bad about living more classic, and just live and be true to who you are and your beliefs. What inspired you to return to practicing more Orthodox Judaism? What were the first steps? My husband and I always knew that this was something that we wanted to do and to work on together. So, it's something that we care about, and even though we are not actively practicing all of the laws, we do keep a kosher home, but we don't keep all of the laws of Sabbath, for example. This is something that we care about because we really want our children to be raised with Orthodox Judaism. We think it's really important. And even though we recognize that we're not living and fulfilling that standard right now, we know that if we don't instill that in our children, then it's just going to constantly be a step removed. And eventually our children and our children's children may not even view themselves as Jews if we don't practice. And this is something that I've been thinking a lot about. It's something I read about in the book Judaism Straight Up, and also I had thought about this idea previously, which is the idea that you think that what you've been raised with is going to kind of percolate through to your children. So if I was raised Orthodox Jewish and raised my children with none of that, I would assume they had the same knowledge that I do. But they will not have had the same experience, and they will not have that knowledge. And so they're going off of much less education and practice than I grew up with. And then they'll be passing on much less than we did to them. And it just ends up getting filtered and filtered and filtered until there's absolutely nothing left. So it's super important to us to be Orthodox Jews and raise our children in an Orthodox home. The first steps of that have been keeping a kosher home and trying to be more diligent about that. The next steps that we are trying to incorporate are to actually find a community that we love and we can raise our children in. And that is something that we are actively pursuing. My parents don't approve of young marriage, 21, 22. How can I get them on board? I think that it really comes down to the two of you knowing how you're going to provide for yourselves and showing that to your parents. At 21 and 22, you are very young, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to get married with absolutely no help from your parents, but it does mean that you have to show them that you are serious about earning for yourselves and providing for yourselves, because once you get married, it's not just about the two of you providing for yourselves, but the possibility that you're going to bring a child into the world. And if you can't provide for yourselves, bringing a child into the world, you're not going to be able to provide for that child either. So your parents are probably just concerned that you aren't prepared for the burden of being married and for the burden of having a family. And if you can show them that you are ready, then I think that that would be a very helpful thing. Now, I'm sure that there are some other obstacles to your parents' view of it, but that would be my first piece of advice, is just knowing how you're going to provide for yourselves and work together to have your own distinct family. What is your opinion on long distance relationships? My husband and I were actually long distance before we got married, so I am not an opponent of long distance relationships, but I do have some rules. A lot can be hidden in a long distance relationship, and a lot can be kind of swept under the rug. A lot can be not necessarily noticed, but you also get the wonderful things about having a ton of conversation and not having the distraction of a physical relationship. But my rules are early on when you're dating, you need to spend 2 weeks together uninterrupted. So you just need to make sure that you're seeing each other every day for 2 weeks. Make sure that you guys like each other at the end of that, because I've lived an experience where at the end of 2 weeks, it was not great after having been long distance for 9 months. And then after that, I would say a month uninterrupted. So just having time to make sure that being together a lot and seeing each other every day and seeing each other in a more normal environment, you guys still love each other and like each other. That is my recommendation with long distance relationships. But I can also do a whole video specifically on long distance relationships because I have experience in them. So if you guys would be interested in seeing a video like that, let me know in the comments below. How do you deal with judgment about waiting to have kids? So my husband and I have been really lucky in that, for the most part, we haven't dealt with judgment from people around us about not having children right away. We've gotten it from some people, but what I would say is that I feel very strongly that young couples need to take a couple of years to work out the kinks in their relationship before they have children. When you are getting married, you are going to have all of these little things that you didn't expect come up in your relationship, and if you're trying to deal with that at the same time that you're hormonal and also sleep deprived and have a child, it's just a lot harder, and you're going to have to deal with those things on the fly as opposed to having practiced and know how to deal with them in advance when you are in the situation where you're both tired or you're hormonal or whatever else it is. So I was always very clear with myself that I wanted to wait a little while before we had children because I wanted to make sure that our relationship was in the best place possible for when we did start trying. So that's kind of my opinion on it. If you are confident in that choice, and I don't think it should be forever. I don't think you should wait a million years to have children. But if you are comfortable with that choice because you understand why you're making it, then it doesn't matter what anyone else says. You know why you're doing what you're doing. What do I do if I lose friends over the fact that I'm conservative? P.S. Love your vids. Thank you. If you lose friends because you're conservative, then they weren't really your friends to begin with. That's just my perspective on things. People should know who you are and recognize that if they've known you for a very long time and then all of a sudden find out that you hold different political beliefs than they do, you're not a changed person. Clearly, you're a good enough person that they were friends with you to begin with. It's a judgment on them if they think that you're a bad person because you have conservative views. It doesn't make you an entirely different person to have conservative views, and it doesn't make you a bad person, obviously. So the people who care about you and don't care, those are the people who are going to end up staying your friends. As I've said before on my channel, I have friends who are liberal. They know I'm conservative. I know they're liberal, and it doesn't matter because we just don't talk about it. That's not something that comes up in every single conversation. And if somebody decides to end a friendship with you because they disagree with your political views, that's on them. When did you and your husband meet? So I want to do a whole video on this, and let me know in the comments if you guys want to see it because I want to get Jacob in on it, and I think I'd like to do our relationship story and how we started dating and all of that. But we met in the summer of 2017 and our friend set us up. There's a lot more to that story, but that's the basics. What's your workout routine and would you do a video on it? Probably not, because I'm not an expert about fitness. It kind of just is something that I incorporate into my life, and I think it's important to do, but I don't think that my routine is great. As of right now, I've been doing the elliptical 5 days a week between 40 minutes and an hour, but there are other weeks where I do elliptical 5 days a week for 30 minutes, and then 3 times a week I weightlift. So it's something that I need to figure out, that balance that really does make me happy and work for me, but the issue is that I'll get into the swing of things and then I'll sort of get bored and then I'll have to switch it up. So it's just about staying active for me. I really think weightlifting is important. So when I do the 5-day elliptical thing with no weightlifting, I do start to feel like, hey, I'm missing something in my regimen. So for example, today was the first day in a while that I decided I needed to put some weightlifting back into my routine. Now, I think there was also a little bit of reticence on my part just because of the surgery that I just recently went through, but it wasn't a huge deal and I theoretically could have lifted pretty soon after. I just kind of didn't want to, and now I'm back in the swing of that. So That's kind of how I do it. I think going to the gym or exercising from home is really important, but I don't think that I am the person to show you guys what you should be doing. What is one argument that compelled you to be pro-life? There are 100 arguments, but for me, it's literally just looking at the science of it. If you look at how quickly babies develop and turn into babies, you cannot unsee it. You can't deny that a baby's life starts at conception. It's just the most incredible thing in the world, and the whole science behind how babies come to be is fascinating. Honestly, if you understand the process from week to week of how a baby develops, I don't know how you could not be pro-life. I truly don't understand it. How do you gracefully deal with negativity from others? The answer is I ignore it. That really is what it is. When people try and say horrible things to me on the internet, I just scroll past. I don't respond. I don't engage. It just doesn't ever make anything better. Like, you don't deserve my attention if you're going to be just throwing negativity in my way. I don't need to respond to that. And that person, that's what they want. They want me to get into a fight with them. I'm not going to respond. And it's the same thing in high school when someone's bullying you. Just being classic is recognizing when it's important to pick your battles. And this is one of those situations where it's never going to be worth my time to engage. So I just don't. And I've honestly felt so good about that decision since I started my blog, since I started my channel, just never trying to get into a discussion with somebody who's just going to be mean or negative in the comments. There's just absolutely nothing to be gained. What's your favorite Disney princess or character? I'm partial to Rapunzel. I really love Tangled. I think that's a really cute movie, and it's just adorable. I love that movie. Of course, I also love the 7 dwarves from Snow White. I think that they're hilarious and so cute. So even though those aren't the princesses, you asked about characters too, I love the 7 dwarfs. Grumpy is adorable, so is Dopey, so is Doc. It's great. Though that movie is wonderful. Okay, so I have been here for a very long time, so we're going to do the very last question, which is, how do you deal with conflict in your relationship? I'm so lucky because Jacob is an incredible communicator, so we can really sit down and have a conversation. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have conflict. Every relationship has conflict. Literally every relationship has conflict, and if somebody tells you otherwise, I think that that is untrue. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be fighting and yelling at each other, but it does mean that you will have disagreements. That's normal. I think something that Jacob and I work on in our marriage is that if we're disagreeing about something, we can each voice how we're feeling and why we're upset, but we really do admit when the other person said something that's true. And that can be hard when somebody gives you a criticism to accept it and recognize that it's accurate. But I think that's kind of what keeps our arguments from turning into fights, is that if somebody says about the other person that they acted in a certain way, if it's true, we'll agree. We'll say that, you know what, that's fair. I did act that way, and that's true. And even if that doesn't necessarily mean that that solves the whole argument, it just shows that you are having this discussion in good faith, that you're not saying, no, I'm right in every single way, and it doesn't matter how I voiced it, and it doesn't matter, my tone of voice. No, if my tone of voice was bad and what I was saying was good, if Jacob says, well, maybe what you were saying is true, but the way you said it, I couldn't listen to, I can recognize that that's true and say, okay, fair enough. Like, that is fair and true. I didn't say that in the best way possible. And he's the same way in the sense that I'm able to say, okay, well, you did this, and he can say, okay, I did do that. And admitting fault in the middle of an argument to the person that you're arguing with, it diffuses the tension a little bit, because it allows you guys to really understand that you're on the same team and you don't want to be treating each other poorly even if you disagree. So that is a huge piece of advice I have about conflict, is even when you're angry, don't let your pride get in the way of resolving the argument. So if there was fault on your side, accepting that there was fault on your side. Because 99% of the time, arguments aren't just one person being terrible. Usually both people have something that kind of like created that. So if you are able to recognize your part in that argument, then you can actually resolve it, and it's I just think it's something that I really love about Jacob and I love about our marriage. So that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was so much fun to go through these questions from you guys and to hear from you. I absolutely love doing this, and I love getting to communicate with you in this way. So make sure to leave in the comments if you have anything to say, if you had any questions that didn't get answered. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And make sure to subscribe to my channel because it really makes a big difference when you do. I really love seeing the Classic crew grow, and you guys are such a huge part of this channel and this community. So thank you guys so much if you have subscribed, and if you haven't, go ahead and do so. Hit that notification bell if you want to get notified of all my new videos whenever they're posted. And I would love if you would also go ahead and subscribe to my newsletter. I just revamped it, and it only comes to your inbox twice a month. It's just a little dose of Classic in your inbox every once in a while. So it won't be spammy, it'll just be a couple times a month. If you'd like to follow me more regularly and be able to participate in stuff like this and submit your questions, feel free to follow me on all social media at Classically Abby. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!